Hello and welcome back to part 4 of etude number 38 in B major, part of the etudes that are assigned for the 2021 Texas All-Region auditions. We're looking today at measures 24 through 32. We're almost at the end, and this section is kind of a bridge that takes us from the middle of the composition to the recap of the main theme. Most of the composition is very loud, so it's interesting that a lot of this section is soft. Before we get into the details of this section, let's count the rhythms. It has an odd pickup, the last quarter of the beat, the before 4. So we're going to start there, the before 4. 1, 2. A 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, trill, triplet 2. A 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 1, a 2, a 3, 4, 1 and 4 and 1 and 2, 4 and 1. Whereas most of this composition is in the key of B major, these 8 measures are actually in the key of E. And it is set off by the last note being E. The highest note is also E as well. So it's probably good for the student to review the E major scale before practicing these 8 measures. At the end of measure 24, we have that incomplete measure, the pickup rhythm to this section, a 4, a 1. So you'll notice it should be crisp, it should not sound swing, not da-da-da-da, but up, almost like a snare drum playing a figure like that. At the end of measure 25, we have a trill followed with grace notes. Let's take a look at how that's going to be performed. The trill is E to F sharp. The grace notes are D sharp to E. At the tempo that this is written, probably you're only going to be able to get in one trill. E, F sharp, E, D sharp, E. It's going to sound like a quintuplet. Notice, the trill and the grace notes should have a smooth approach. We don't want to pause on E before the grace notes. Many times auditions I hear something like, that's not what the composer has in mind. It should be a continuous flow from trill to grace notes. Very advanced players can take a little bit of a chance trying 2 trills, but 1 trill is certainly enough at a fast tempo. Now let's take a look at some of the bogus staccato marks. I've mentioned them in the previous videos for this etude, and we have a couple of them in this section. You'll notice that starting with the measure with the triplet, we have the staccato on the last note of the triplet. At the allegro tempo, we're not going to hear that. We're also not going to hear the staccato after the breath mark. White them out or just erase them or ignore them. And at a fast tempo, you even have a less of a chance to hear that note played as staccato. Now let's jump over to measure 28, which is a chromatic scale and unfortunately was written in the wrong enharmonic, because on a descending chromatic scale, C, B, the next note should be B flat and then A natural. So I even write the B flat in there to remind myself it's a descending chromatic scale. And that's just a little typo error that has existed from the early 1800s to today. Now we have the highest note in this section, the high E. We're going to have to play it as so-called left E6, meaning we're going to use the left A flat key, because the next note after it is C sharp. You could play it on the right side, but it's super awkward. It's really awkward. I don't recommend it at all. Play it on the left side. That's a much smoother slur and easier to perform for almost every student. I've made a lot of comments in this etude about bogus or unnecessary staccato markings, but at measure 31, the next to the last measure of this excerpt, the staccatos are legitimate and certainly okay here. We just don't want to play them too short. So let's take a look at how they would sound. First, we'll practice them legato. And you'll notice that I have marked out, I've got an accent sign with a kind of a universal do not do it here. So it's easy to accent the G sharp for me, and we don't want it accented here. We have an E major arpeggio. It should sound all the same volume. Now that I've played it somewhat legato, I'll shorten the first two notes. Next, let's look at the decrescendo at the end of the excerpt. It really is a 4-beat decrescendo. It should continue all the way to the silence. We'll start by practicing it as a whole note on E and going from forte to piano in 4 beats. That's quite a dynamic range in 4 fast counts. Now let's do the same thing with G sharp, 4 counts, decrescendo. Finally, put all the notes in together. You'll notice the pedagogy was to start with one note with a good tone and vibrato, 4-count decrescendo. Then slowly put in the other notes. As I've mentioned on the previous videos, practice all technical passages, all fast passages, slowly and focus on tone. Make tone your first consideration. Technique is a function of persistence and continuous practice. Use your journal to document your progress through the weeks and months leading up to the all-region etude auditions. When you finish the audition, you can look back on the journal with a sense of pride and accomplishment of all the things that you did, working systematically to improve your tone, technique, and interpretation of these etudes. This is the end of part 4 of etude number 38.